Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to hold on just a minute while our platform's letting everyone in. But feel free to head over to the chat and give us a greeting. Let us know where you're tuning in from today. We would love to hear from you. I see our numbers growing. Welcome, welcome. You will notice that as our platform is letting everyone in, you're automatically muted. Your cameras are off and it will stay that way throughout today. But we encourage you to use the chat to ask your questions, make comments, and share in there. So feel free to add those in. I see the greetings coming in. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Perfect. Well, we have a great discussion ahead of us, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to the I Don't Know How series, which is presented by the Center for Resilient Families at Arizona State University, Mental Health America, and the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. I'm Jackie Zimmerman. I'm the Public Education Associate at Mental Health America's National Office, and I'll be moderating today's session. Throughout today, we're going to explore some personal experiences faced by parents living with mental health conditions and also those who work with parents who are living with mental health conditions, or just that added stress of being a parent and how that affects mental health. So we're going to kind of dive into that discussion of what that looks like and how parents can really care for their mental health and how can we focus on ourselves while also caring for a child. So before we jump into that, I have a few things to mention. Like I said, your cameras are automatically off, your mics are automatically muted. But if you have any technical difficulties during this session, try closing out and restarting Zoom first. Usually that solves most of the problems. But if not, you can add your questions into the Q&A feature. We have some staff here that can help talk you through that. Like I said, we won't have you unmute for your questions for today's session, but please feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. We'll hopefully have some time to go through some of those at the end. So you can post those through the Q&A and then they'll be addressed by our panelists here. And lastly, if you would like to request a certificate of attendance, we have a link for you to do so. That will be included in your follow-up materials, as well as I'll post that link in the chat here shortly as well. And so without further ado, let's meet our speakers for today. First, we have Luis Resendez, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist based in Riverside, California. Luis specializes in men's mental health issues and trauma. He's also an adjunct professor at Pacific Oaks College in Pasadena and the author of What About Dad? Understanding and Addressing Postpartum Depression in Men. Welcome, Luis. We also with us today have Lori Poland, who's the co-founder and chief executive officer at the National Foundation to End Child Abuse and Neglect, and CAN. Lori's a therapist who specializes in attachment and trauma and is trained in family counseling, child and adolescent therapy, and infant mental health. As a childhood survivor of a high-profile abuse case, she's since devoted her life and career to ending child abuse and neglect, as well as healing its cycles and ripple effects. As a mother, Lori brings to our conversation her lived experiences of navigating parenthood. Welcome, Lori. And we also with us have Erica Procaccini. I hope I got that last name right. Erica lives in Connecticut with her husband and 16-year-old daughter, who is on the autism spectrum. She has a master's degree in psychology and is a licensed marriage and family therapy associate. Erica is also a group facilitator for the Youth Mental Health Project Parent Support Network, which meets monthly online. Connecting with other parents and focusing on her health and physical well-being has been instrumental in helping Erica through the stresses of raising a child with complex and often demanding needs. Welcome, Erica, and welcome to all of you. I'm really grateful to have each of you and your experiences, perspectives, and professional experiences here to lead us through this discussion. So, while those bios gave us a little bit about you, I'd love to hear from each of you a little bit more about your experience regarding our topic today, the intersection of parenting and mental health, whether that be personally or both professionally.
I'd be happy to go. So, first of all, thank you all for joining, and thank you to Erica and Louise for being here. It's really fun to be with peers and other professionals and other people who are just focused on trying to help our world be better. So, for me, I am a parent. My partner and I, we have 7 children, and so we're really actively busy. There isn't a dull moment in our lives ever. And in addition to that, I have focused on working with trauma, working with children, and working with family systems for the better part of 24 years. And I myself experienced postpartum depression after my first daughter was born, but not after either of my other 2 biological children were born. And just a huge love and passion for me is in my work and in my personal life is constantly being okay with having conversations about where people are at any given point, and just embracing the openness around mental illness, and just having a mental brain in general. Maybe it's not even considered an illness, but it's just mental well-being, and how do we embrace that, and utilizing both our hard times and our times of thriving to help us learn and grow as human beings. And how do parents ensure that they're recognizing that within themselves so that they can model that same kind of behavior for not just their own children, but really anyone and all people around them.
Hi, I would like to go. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I unmuted. Okay. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you. When I think about parenting and mental health, it begins with the birth of my daughter in 2007. And of course, all of the challenges of being a new mother, the joy and overwhelming love I felt for my baby, and also the exhaustion that comes along with caring for a newborn. Very early on, however, I began to have concerns about my daughter's development, particularly when I would bring her to the Mommy and Me classes. I noticed that she wasn't engaging in the same way as the other babies, particularly with eye contact and attention. We received a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder when my daughter was 2.5. And despite having concerns about her development, diagnosis was still a shock and very difficult on my mental health. A lot of the stress was from not knowing what life would look like for my family, my daughter, and me. However, I knew I needed to give her whatever support therapy she needed to help her reach her full potential, whatever that looked like. And that's where things get tricky for a parent with a child with needs. I needed to be there for her, and most days were spent making sure she was okay, advocating for her, etc. And I wouldn't have done anything differently because it's what she needed at the time. However, I lost myself a bit in the process. It was really a struggle to find joy in the things that used to fulfill me, like exercise or socializing with friends. I found it very difficult to try to explain to friends and family my concerns about my daughter and how it was affecting me. And also my husband was having difficulty processing his feelings. So I tended to hold in a lot of my emotions and turn to unhealthy ways of coping with stress, like overeating. Feeling isolated is definitely a challenge because often your child doesn't engage in the typical activities that their peers are doing. My child would be overwhelmed from a sensory perspective. So I sought out programs that accommodated her. She participated in our YMCA and gymnastics and sports specifically for kids with needs. And this really helped me feel less isolated in my community and connected me with other parents who had children with challenges. It was very validating to hear from others with similar experiences. And in order for me to feel more part of our school community, because that's also a challenge, I volunteered for the parent teacher organization as a special education parent representative. And I also hired a special education advocate who helped take much of the stress of having to deal with advocating for my daughter with her school, who was able to evaluate her program and recommend helpful changes to her IEP. And even though I have a professional background on it, it's still such an emotional burden that having someone else to sort of take care of that stuff, I didn't have to worry about it. And that helped with my stress levels. So in respect to the question about parenting and mental health, finding ways to feel connected to my community and to other parents was an important step for me in terms of finding that balance between self-care and also helping my daughter get the best care and education she could receive. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and be able to speak with you all. So my experience with my own parenting and mental health, it started in 2012 after the birth of my first son. He was born, a couple of weeks actually after he was born, he was diagnosed with colics. So that made life a nightmare for both my wife and I. He wasn't sleeping, really irritable, irresponsive to any type of soothing and what have you. So that was a stressor. But in addition to that, after he was born, I just noticed within myself, a desire to be left alone. I was isolating from family and friends, probably even more lethargic outside of the colic issues. I was feeling hopeless. My own issues and my background as far as just, parenting and what I was exposed to and what have you, and wanting to be a better parent, just constant thoughts of, I can't let my son down. I got to be the best parent I can be. Pretty much perfectionist thoughts constantly crossing my mind. Difficulty eating, not wanting to eat or eating more. Just I knew something was wrong. And this carried on for months. Even after the colic issues had gotten a little bit better, I was just still feeling the way I was. So one day when I was at work, I was working at a community-based clinic at the time, at a clinic 20 miles east of Los Angeles. So anyway, one day I did a Google search and looked up my symptoms, everything I was presenting with, and I was mortified to discover that I was dealing with postpartum depression. I didn't want to believe it. I was living in a state of denial. I, like pretty much most of the general population, was thinking, no, this only happens to women. How can this happen to men? So I did more research and just, again, in that state of shock and denial, just as time went by, I came to an acceptance that this is what's happening. This is what's going on. So I think, what really helped at that time was just a tag team approach that my wife and I took in taking care of our son. So she would rest while I would take care of him, handle the parenting duties, and then vice versa. That really got us through the choppy waters, especially during the colic phase. But even going to my own therapy as well and coming to terms that, yes, this is what's going on, dealing with my symptoms, accepting them, sharing them with my therapist and, even close friends and colleagues, help me understand that, yes, okay, you know what, I'm dealing with this, and probably very more men deal with this thing, but don't want to talk about it because just as men, we're conditioned to deal with things, suck it up and be men and so forth. So no, I mean, my therapy journey was very helpful. And as the months went by into that summer, my symptoms just slowly decreased. And I took my experience from that and I decided to turn it into a story. So I wrote a book, you can't really see it, but entitled, as you had mentioned, Jackie, What About Dad? Understanding Postpartum Depression in Men. My intention in writing this book, it wasn't to land on the New York Times bestseller list or anything like that. My intention in writing this book was to raise awareness that, yes, guys, this stuff happens to you. It's probably happened to you. It's just, again, maybe you were in a state of denial or you didn't think this could happen to you, or even just the stigma and conditioning and all of these things did not lead you to want to come forward and work through and resolve these issues. So I actually started writing it during the pandemic, believe it or not. And one thing that encouraged me to write it was, in the early days of the pandemic, when the first lockdowns happened, we all remember stories of diapers and formula and things disappearing from store shelves. And, just seeing those images, I felt so bad for the parents, like, oh my God, you know what, how are you going to be able to, just get even the basic supplies for the little ones? What's going to happen? And then, I heard a lot of stories too about men still going out and working 60, 70 hours a week, and, professions that, weren't able to work from home, weren't, based from home and what have you. So I thought about that too. And I'm like, you know what? I think now it's the time for me to tell my story, because just, again, if I can raise awareness and even instill just a tiny bit of hope in the people, maybe it can make a difference. We're not going to move mountains or anything like that right away, but just some differences to where, again, we can share a narrative, encourage men, to come forward, seek help to address these issues, just for the betterment of the family unit as a whole. We're helping whole families here, parents, children, just to live as healthy and balanced lives as they could. So, yeah, it was a journey, dealing with this and writing the story, but I'm so blessed to be able to share it with everyone, with the world practically. And I'm hoping that, it just, again, raises more awareness. We start having more conversations, and we start connecting more fathers, more men with that support that they need.
Thanks, Luis. And thank you, Lori and Erica. Luis, I think a point that you bring up that's so important to bring into our conversation today is just that idea of stigma, and stigma with parents, and beyond mental health stigma, but just this idea that parents have to be the perfect parent and the pressure put on them, and that you have to be strong and do all of these things for your child. And that's what comes first. And for so many parents it is. But breaking down that stigma that it's okay to also struggle, and it's okay to let people know that and reach out for help and talk about it. Because the more we can talk about it, the more those going through it will feel supported, be more likely to reach out for help and receive that. So I just appreciate all of you being here to share your very personal and professional experiences with us. As we've all kind of touched on in different ways, we know that parenting is so complicated and complex and looks different for everyone. But all parents experience stress, and a lot of individuals, on top of just that normal stress, experience anxiety, depression, postpartum depression, or other mental health challenges. And that makes parenting even more difficult to navigate. And as parents, you often end up putting your family or your child's needs before your own. How have you seen that affect your personal or professional life with those that you're working with? And how can parents start to shift their mindset to, I need to care for myself so that I can care for my family and my child?
Eric, I'm sorry, ladies first.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think the hardest part for me was recognizing that what I was doing was no longer sustainable. After many years of relative calm with my daughter, during elementary school, things changed drastically with her overall functioning and mental health. We really believe this was due to puberty, those pesky hormones, and also transitioning to middle school. Her elementary school was a nice, safe, quiet, small school, and then she gets hit with this huge middle school with lots of things going on. And anyway, things were really bad. We at one point were considering possible hospitalization, at least as a temporary solution to help medically stabilize her, because she was becoming physically aggressive with herself and us. My stress level was so unbearable. I was often concerned that I was going to have a heart attack and die. It was really bad. I neglected my own health. I was very overweight, as food had become a way of finding pleasure and comfort. However, I knew that if I wanted to be there for my daughter and my family, I had to start prioritizing my health and wellness, or I wasn't going to be around them for much longer. Serendipitously, a friend threw me a lifeline and I took it. She was a facilitator to a parent support group in my town for parents who had children who were struggling with their mental health. I went on the meeting and mostly listened. This was actually pre-COVID, so it was an in-person meeting, sharing a bit of my story. The support and validation I received from the other parents was life-changing. That's why I'm also grateful for this group, because it did make an impact on me, having just being around other parents that understand. Shortly after I started coming to meetings, I was asked to become the facilitator. And I knew if I had to run the groups, I would be obligated to attend. And so I've been running the groups now every month for the last 4 years. I'm very proud of that. This small change, going to groups, sharing my story, supporting other parents, really began a life-changing journey for me. As I felt better about my mental health, I began new health and wellness goals. I changed my diet. I got a health coach. I lost 75 pounds, which is, I'm proud of, and I'm also mortified that I gained that much weight, but that was the stress. That was that my mental health wasn't right, and it reflected in my physical. And I ran my first half marathon this past February. And I have another 2 on the horizon for coming up in the fall and next winter. After a long break from working as a marriage and family therapist, I now have a thriving practice. And the help of our special education advocate, we found a therapeutic school for my daughter, who just completed 10th grade and had one of the best school years that she's had since elementary school. So it was a rough period, but we got her there, and she's doing much better. And I'm convinced that my wellness contributed to my daughter's wellness. I became more healthy and strong and independent, and I strongly believe that that provided the space for her to grow and reach her potential. So. Thank you.
For me, in all of my years as a practicing clinician, I've always used the empty cup analogy when talking to my parent clients. The idea that you can't drink from an empty cup, in not so many words. So is that, as parents, I mean, it's pretty much embedded in our DNA that when we have our children, we're going to want to serve them, tend to them, and what have you. But, what good is it doing if we're not tending to ourselves, our own needs, and, those physical and emotional and even spiritual senses. So this idea again that, you can allow everyone to drink from the cup, but when everybody's drinking from the cup and it's your turn to drink, there's nothing there. And then you go thirsty. So it was actually around the birth of my second son in 2014, I started to realize, wait a minute, am I practicing what I preach? Am I allowing myself also to drink from the empty cup? And I mean, from the cup that was empty, subsequently empty. And the answer was, well, no, I mean, I'm not drinking anything. So what happened was at that time, my wife, she was working a hospital-based job. So she had a weird schedule. So, there'd just be times when I would be with the kids mostly on weekends. She would be working. And then she was also in school too. She was in her grad program to become a therapist as well. So, I was home with the kids, and I mean, of course, I knew I was obligated as dad, and out of all my love and everything, to be there for them. I also thought too, is that, this would be also a perfect opportunity for me to just take time to either exercise, catch up with friends, reconnect with the hobby or whatnot. So, I talked to her, and I threw this idea that, we have a sitter who watches the kids when we do occasional date nights. What about, maybe me having her come in a Saturday or Sunday a couple times a month and watch the kids for a couple of hours while I go do these things? And she was on board. She was like, you need to do that. You really do. So, a couple of Saturdays, Sundays throughout, a given month, she would come and watch the kids for a few hours, and I would go on hikes. I'd go to the gym. I just even grab lunch or coffee or something like that. So it was, just recharging essentially, to, be a parent and be there for my kids, be present with them as much as I can at, again, those physical, emotional, and spiritual manners and ways, because just, again, I was focused so much on work and, caring for children and what have you. Again, what are they going to get from me? What's the best I can offer them if my energy levels, all of these things are practically at zero? So it really helped out a lot. And, even to this day, every now and then, I'll take that time to just go, have a little bit of me time. My wife will also do the same thing. We'll take that tag team approach on it, because we both realize that naturally, as being givers in our parenting roles and being therapists as well, we're just constantly giving, we're giving, and we're giving. Of course, again, we do that all from the love of our hearts because, we're parents, and it's just why we chose the professions we did, but we also need to recharge. So again, to this day, when I catch myself using that empty cup analogy with a lot of my parent clients, I'm like, wait a minute, okay, so have I been filling up my cup? If not, okay, what do I need to do to start filling up my cup, just to make sure, again, I'm giving my children my absolute best.
Wow, I love this. I'll just share a little bit as well, and just to give a little bit of context about my background. So I grew up in poverty, and I also, at the age of 3, was playing in my front yard, and a stranger drove up and asked if I liked candy, and like any sugar-loving 3-year-old, I said yes and hopped in the car with him. And so he took me, abducted me from my family and took me up to the mountains and left me for dead in an outhouse toilet for 4 days. And that was at a pretty pivotal stage of development for any child, to experience such a major attachment disruption. And it was in that moment and in those days that for me, attachment and safety and security became unpredictable. And so as I grew up in poverty and surrounded by a lot of substance use, and with the sensation that I couldn't trust the world around me, my coping skill with learning how to manage that was to always be okay. And my parents, they really so badly wanted me to be normal after going through such a traumatizing incident. And that word normal, there was no definition for that. I mean, especially as a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 30-year-old, 35-year-old, and here I am at 42, still trying to find out what that definition looks like. And, but I knew what I was experiencing as a child in my life was abnormal, and I knew that I wanted so badly to provide different for my children. And so that fed and really just like put oil on the flames of the sensation for perfect parenthood. And yet, when I went into parenthood, I remember when I got pregnant with my daughter, I was so excited. And it was a challenging pregnancy because as soon as I became pregnant, I realized that my ability to protect and keep my children safe was beyond my control. All I could do was the very best I had, and I could, never let them play in the front yard and never, put them in situations that were more risk adverse. And yet there was a helplessness to experiencing what my family had, which was just a mere moment of my dad going inside to get me a popsicle, and within that, however many seconds, I was gone. And so that led to that severe postpartum for me. And as I aged, I realized in my own parenting that I was growing up while my children were growing up, that I was learning to reparent myself in a very nurturing and self-embracing sort of way, whereas my parents did what they knew to do, which was to teach me resiliency and to teach me to be strong against the adversity that I had endured. And that was wonderful. I think that there was so much of that has made me the woman and the badass that I am now. And yet, for me with my own children, it showed me several things. One is that when you have a long list of adverse childhood experiences like I had, I knew as an adult that my lifespan would be cut by 20 years. And here I am, 42, the average age for a woman is 89, and 20 years from that is 69. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna cut my kids' time with me on this planet even shorter if I don't begin to truly tend to who I am. And what I've also realized through becoming a parent and not having this so-called instructions manual that I just wish was there, is that by me, as some of my fellow panelists have shared, by me not taking care of me and really intending to take care of my children. I was teaching them that other people's needs and other people's well-being were more important than their own. And here I am saying, you matter, you have to do all of these things. And my kids are out there saying, you matter, you have to do all these things. And so we were in this constant cycle of paying that forward. And yet I was witnessing their own struggles and their own sacrificial existence of perfectionism, of needing to, be there and attend to everybody else. And it just honestly, folks, in the last couple of years, have I begun to see I don't have to be perfect. I am not well on a daily basis. I cry all the time. Ask my staff. Just Friday, I broke down to all of them. I can be a boss. I can be a mom. I can be a partner. I can be a friend. I can be a self. And I can be good. I can be bad. I can be wounded. I can be all of those things. I don't have to claim any one thing all of the time. And so as I've grown, I've learned that who I was a way for me to cope, and who I am is a way I want to be. And that by being who I am, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, knock on something, that my children will see that who they want to be is their choice. And I get to be their cheerleader, and I get to support them in that. And I just hope that it works, because I'm learning as I'm going alongside all the other experts in this life. And I just find it a terrifying, beautiful experience. It's all of that at once. So thanks for letting me share and to answer that question.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Luis and Erica. I think one thing that is a thread between each of your stories is there's time when you weren't able to care for yourself, or you didn't know how to in the way that you needed. But on the other side of that, you found ways. You found ways to cope. You found ways to support yourself. You found ways to fill your cup, so to say, as Luis had mentioned. And I'm sure there's parents on our call right now that are in different spots of your journeys, where maybe they are saying, my cup's empty and I don't know how to refill it, or I don't know how to start those steps to take care of myself. I'd love to hear from each of you, and I know it can be different for everyone, of how some strategies and self-care activities or things you do to kind of refill your cup, or to prioritize yourself, and what that looks like for you and your family. I know that someone in the chat had also mentioned, it can be hard when finances are a struggle too, or you're in poverty, or there's all these external forces that might seem to be pushing against you getting the care that you need or taking care of yourself. And so I just love to hear from each of you a little bit about your perspective on that, maybe some things that have worked for you that those listening can take with them.
I'll go ahead and start. So just really quickly to address the poverty issue. Yeah, I know that's tough. I grew up in poverty as well. And, just even seeing the struggles of my parents, my mom, for a good majority of my childhood life, it was tough and difficult. What we relied on back then were a lot of community-based resources, food banks. I attended a Head Start school rather than going to a traditional preschool, so things like that. But even using support from family and or friends, neighbors, just these trusted people in our community. I know for a lot of folks, it can be kind of hard to reach out for that help, especially too if they're wary about, connections with strangers and things like that. So just looking at whatever resources are available and, utilizing them. And even through these conversations we're having today, hopefully, someone can chime in and help advocate for, more services available to parents, single parents, whomever, in these economically disadvantaged areas, that, hey, they do need the help, they do need the support. What are you going to do to allocate monies and funds to just make sure that these folks are able to stay afloat, pretty much for the most part? I mean, the most part, because for many of our folks, again, in these disadvantaged areas, just every day is staying on survival mode, essentially, is what it is. Now, for me, in my own personal life, so what helps keep me balanced, daily meditation, mindfulness practices, every morning, as consistently as I can, at least, I'll start my day off with a 5-10 minute meditation. I'll put on my AirPods, listen to some binaural beat type music, and just be present, be mindful, aware in the moment, stepping out of my thoughts, just being pure consciousness. That really helps out a lot. Gratitude. I have a gratitude journal. I'm finishing up with it. I'm going to start another one soon, but just writing down, what I'm grateful for, even if it's just seeing the sunrise, waking up to see another day, knowing that I have a fulfilling career, all of these wonderful things, looking at my life as best as I can, that, I'm living life with abundance of what I have right now, rather than wanting more, want. No, it's about what you've got right now, and finding, gratitude with that. And even extending that gratitude, just random acts of kindness. Once in a while, I'll buy a stranger a donut at the donut shop, or, open the door, just things like that, that for that split second will make a difference in someone's life. And, even just whatever I can do to incorporate, physical wellness into my life, my diet, drinking plenty of water, taking vitamins, staying active. So maybe I'm not getting to the gym every day, but taking my dog for an extended walk, anything like that. I'm a really big proponent of physical activity. And I don't mean, training for marathons or training to be an MMA superstar or anything like that. Just getting the body going, going outside, letting the serotonin be released through the brain, just seeing life, enjoying the beauty of what, the outside world has to offer, and just taking it in for those brief moments. I think that's really helped me stay as balanced as I could, because just as I'm sure the panel can agree, having children, yes, it is tough. It's a challenge. It's a daily challenge. And we're having to navigate choppy waters at times, fulfilling thing to do, but yeah, very difficult. And again, in us being providers, us being givers in that role too. And these roles is that, yeah, that also too, it takes energy from us at times. So the key again is just staying as balanced as I can, get from one day to the next. But even when, the day at the end of the day, it's just I reflect on that, well, today was a rough day and God, a lot happened. All right, but just taking life day by day by day, and not being afraid to hold out hope that maybe tomorrow would be a little bit different. And let me also maintain realistic expectations of myself.
Thank you, Louise and Lori. I'm a panelist today, but I'm learning so much from you, listening to your story. So thank you so much. I just have a short answer for this, but it's do whatever you can do to help you feel connected to who you are as a person, individual. We take on these roles of spouse or partner or mother or daughter or whatever. And me finding things that made me grounded and feel connected to myself. So I had mentioned the exercise for me, like moving my body. I've been taking a boxing class that I love, and I get to get out my aggressions and just get that heart moving, and all those endorphins that come along with the exercise. And, when my daughter was in crisis, which was a long period of time, actually, it's really hard to find time to do those things. And sometimes for me, I love doing puzzles, and even just when everybody was in bed and the house was quiet and I had a minute to myself, and even though I was tired and wanted to go to sleep, just having an hour for myself to do puzzles on my iPad. It sounds like a little thing, but it just helped me relax and clear my mind before bed. I wasn't thinking about all the things in my life that were creating stress for me, but just, doing the puzzles and enjoying myself. And I like things that challenge me cognitively. That helped ground me. And remember, ultimately, in my case, being a healthier you is an act of love for your family. So even me just taking that little time for myself to do something that made me feel good and connected me to myself, made me more present for everyone else in my life. So thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Yeah, I would say for me, I really want to reiterate that my well-being and like my shift to self-care wasn't like a moment of light switch. I would say that there has been seasons and sometimes literally seasons of the year, but there have been seasons in my life and seasons in my day sometimes where I have moments of recognition of what I need to do for myself, which can cause pause and cause me to make change. And I think for me, the key to that was meeting and really listening to and becoming okay with listening to my intuition and recognizing that at whatever moment, wherever I am is where I am, and that is okay. And then my intuition has consistently been able to guide me around what am I needing. So whether that's water or a nap or a cry or a laugh or a friend or my kids or whatever, right? My therapist, I've had 3 therapists in my adult life. I wasn't allowed to or encouraged to go to therapy as a child. And so on 3 days after my 21st birthday, I found my first therapist, and I've been with I kind of revolve door depending on my need and what style I'm needing in that time of my life. I will go back to Mark or Jolynn or Terry, and those are kind of my 3 people, and they all know about one another. I don't typically ever see any of them at the same time, but we do family therapy. I do partner therapy with my partner. Health and wellness is a big part, but I ebb and flow in that. You know, I used to be a long distance runner. I broke my foot. That kept me on the couch for 6 months. And then it was like, yep, I'm not getting back there anytime soon. You know, so it's like I've ebbed and flowed with where I'm at. And I've found less pressure in listening to what I need in each stage of my season, versus like feeling that the only way for me to be healthy and well is if I'm in the gym 3 times a week. I have a membership, but they'll tell you the last time I was there, which was probably like 6 weeks ago, to be perfectly honest. But I feel, just to re-sum up what I've tried to say, I'm talking in circles, is that listening to my intuition and just doing what I'm able to do in that moment. And sometimes that's what I have to give. And being okay with that has pulled me out of that perfectionism that I can so quickly chew on and like become hungry for more of. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Lori. So many good points from each of you in that. And I think, you know, your comment, Lori, about listening to your body, listening to your intuition, listening to your needs is so important for parents, because I think so often you're always worried about someone else's needs and what they want at that time and what's right for them. And so to really take that time to sit and reflect of what do I need can be a different experience for parents who are used to just being on the offense sometimes with helping others. And so it's so important to take that time to check in. And like you said, it might look different day to day, might look different month to month or year to year. But as long as you're doing that inventory of what possible you right now is so important and can be beneficial. Thank you all for sharing. And thank you everyone in the chat for adding ways that you're taking care of yourself or that have worked for you. I love seeing all of those, and they're just great reminders for us all. So thanks for sharing, everyone. I know we have a little bit of time left, and I want to shift the conversation a little bit. And we had this question, but I also saw a very similar question in the chat to really kind of think about how, as parents, we can open up dialogue with our children about mental health and what that looks like. Someone in the chat had said that as a child of trauma and now a parent, I'm realizing I don't know how to regulate my emotions. How do I learn to regulate my own emotions so I can teach my children how to regulate theirs? And I think that comes back to this discussion of, you know, if we're parents that are struggling with mental health, how can parents have those conversations with their children? And how do we teach kids about their emotions, their thoughts, and their mental health in our own experiences?
I'd love to just answer just one element of that, and I'm also excited and eager to learn both from Erica and Louise as well. For me, though, I think that it starts with just having the conversation, and I think that for a lot of parents, there is this: I have to be able to say the right thing, and if I don't say the right thing, I maybe, or if I'm not an expert in it, then maybe I shouldn't be talking about it. But I think just having the conversation in and of itself creates a sense of connection and a safe space to be able to somersault our way through conversation having. And I don't even know all the right things to say to my children. And, you know, they say, but you do this for a living. You like help people. I'm like, yeah, but you're my forest. I am in the forest with you. It's really hard to see the whole community around me when I'm like right in front of the trees. And so, you know, I think even they have this, well, my mom is all knowing and they're friends. And I'm like, I'm not at all. I just am okay with, like, I use the analogy because I'm a horrible somersaulter. You shouldn't watch it. It's not on social media anywhere, but when I do it, it's really ugly. And so I use that analogy and just trying to get my way through conversations sometimes, that they don't have to end or start perfectly, but it's really just about having that and walking through that and saying, I don't know what that answer is, but let's explore together. And I found for me and my clients and within my work at EndCan that when we can just allow parents to also be humans, it really models this example for children and our up and coming adults, that it's okay to be imperfect and it's okay to find our way. So that's worked for me.
Thank you, Lori. I mean, you said it really well. I don't have that much to add other than just in my own experience with my daughter, just feeling like, I mean, because she has a limited capacity to have deeper conversations. But I think just showing by my own example, a little bit of what you were talking about before, Lori, that like, you know, if I'm not prioritizing my mental and physical health, what is that demonstrating for my daughter? And she noticed my transformation and is very proud of me. And we have conversations about that. And, you know, I talk about how I wasn't healthy and that it wasn't just about my weight, that mommy was sad and I was struggling, and that I decided to, you know, basically prioritize my health. And it's funny because she has been, you know, like making good choices and not wanting to eat the junk, and, you know, and she's become so much more independent and capable. I used to say that I would figure out how I was going to feel any given day based on how my daughter was feeling. And I recognize as a mental health professional that that's not healthy. And I think just getting that little bit of separation between us and me being more independent has opened up space for her to become more independent and seek her own path. Like I need her to be able to, you know, function in the world without mommy always there catching her. She's got to learn things and be independent and strong. And I think with my example and allowing space for her to find her own path, that's sort of in some ways indirectly how we've had conversations about the importance of health and wellness. So thank you.
You know, one thing I can applaud a lot of children's programming shows and what have you is that more of them seem to be placing an emphasis on feelings, identification, and expression. You can find a plethora of TV shows, you know, things on even social media, psychoeducation, things like that. So I think if some of our parents can, you know, look up some of those things. I can't think of any off the top of my head because it's been a while since I've actually watched, you know, preschool or younger children programming, but if they can just look, or even just what's on PBS and things like that, maybe sit down and watch a couple of those programs with their children, and then have some sort of reflective discussion. What did it mean when so and so was upset? What did it mean when they were sad, and what have you? And even opening up dialogue that, these are times when mom, dad, when we've been sad, when we've been disappointed, and even just using real life examples. So if you have a child, for example, who's not cleaning their room, and you're cueing them again and again, come on, clean your room, and you catch yourself in that disappointment, expressing that I'm disappointed you're not cleaning your room. I told you, I keep reminding you, and I'm feeling disappointed. Because like you had mentioned too, Lori, the idea of modeling, we're teaching our children, about feelings and, healthy expression and things like that. But it has to come from us because, in all reality, we're our first children's windows to the outside world, and what they see through the world, in the world, often comes from us, and just our expressions and things like that. So I think that's really helpful. And I think even too, just an acceptance, this radical acceptance that we feel feelings, we feel emotions, moms, dads, kids, everybody, your friends at school, we feel feelings and emotions, and it's okay because we're people. That's what we do as people. We're not robots and not machines. We feel feelings and emotions, and it's a normal and healthy thing. Just like when we have a tummy ache, we're, oh, my tummy hurts. That's our reaction to the physical distress, or even, a toothache or a sore throat, just however we respond to those in a physical manner. Well, to emotions, sadness, we may cry, anger, we may yell, and things like that. So reminding our children too that it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to have feelings, because the reality is that a good majority of us grew up hearing things, don't cry, don't be sad, don't be angry, which is, now, in retrospect, it's total invalidation of our abilities to just be human, essentially. So we want to shift the narrative to that and remind our children that it's okay, again, to feel sad, to feel angry, to feel disappointed. Simultaneously, what do we do to express those emotions and cope with them in healthier ways?
Yeah, thank you, Luis. And I know, our question in the chat too by the parent was, realizing that they haven't been able to regulate their own emotions too, and how to learn that. And I think, Lori, you addressed that in a great way earlier, as someone who's experienced trauma throughout your lifetime, really finding that support through therapists and through help. And, it's okay to seek that professional help to learn those skills later in life, so you can model them for your children, like you all talked about, so you can have those conversations, you can feel confident, comfortable, and you can take care of yourself in that way too. So thank you all for touching on that. I know we have about 5 minutes left, and I'd love to get in, I know we've been able to sprinkle in a few of the audience's questions within these, but I'd love to do one last audience question before we wrap up. And this was sent by someone in our chat asking to the panelists, how did you manage the stressors that other people have brought into your lives while they were trying to help you with their personal solutions to your problem? And I think one thing too that is important to realize as mental health professionals, I know many of you on the call are too, is how when you're helping a child, and then your work is also helping other people, how do you process through all of that and be able to take care of yourself when you're constantly in this state of helping other people?
For me, I get asked that question often, and I have a personal response and a professional response. The professional response is, how do you work with abuse? I work a lot with adult survivors, as well as family systems where there's abuse, and child abuse specifically. And I don't ever look at it like I'm dealing with the hard stuff. I look at it like, what a gift to watch the growth. And I mean, I don't think I've I mean, certainly I've gone home and cried. I've carried some stories. I've been traumatized vicariously. And that's when I utilize my support systems, just like the people that I'm seeing utilize me as one of their support systems. It is just this cycle of, yep, and we ask, and we ask, and we ask, and we ask. And so that has been how I've always looked at it. And then on a personal level, when I have people who want to opinionize my existence or tell me what I need to do or remind me of all the things that that I have in my shortcomings, specifically my father, as wonderful as he can be, he also is really good at trying to really endorse that perfectionistic, I'm really stuck on that today, perfectionistic tendency within me. And so I've given him an expiration date. I've said to him, Dad, you have 30 days after any one incident to ask me or address me in seeking change around that. And you don't get to, keep all the tally cards so that 7 months, 3 years, however long down the road, you play all your cards. And I didn't even know we were in the midst of a card game. I can't do anything about something that happened 6 months ago or 6 years ago for that matter. So I do set I always say you set boundaries with people you don't trust, and you ask for what you need from people you do trust. And so the people in my life that I trust will show up and attend to what I need. And the people that I don't trust, I have to set some stronger boundaries with them. And that's just like, what are my rules? I get to make up my own rules. It's my life. And that's something I just, as an adult, leaned into. So that's been new for me. And I hope that answers what you were asking.
So I just want to say, in the personal realm, exactly the same for me, Lori. I had some toxic family members who, believe it or not, seem to get great joy on a very sick level as to what I was going through. I cut them out of my life. It made me very sad, but I needed to do that to protect my own mental health. So again, surround yourself with people that you trust and lean on them, and set strong boundaries with people who are not helpful. In terms of my professional life, I actually took a long break from being a marriage and family therapist because I didn't feel like my mental health, I was in a good place to provide care for others. And I wanted to still be active and do something. So I was, for a good 4 years, the special education co-chair for my daughter's parent-teacher organization. And we ran groups for other parents in the school, and, had like speakers come, and I did what I could to sort of utilize my skills as a mental health professional, but in a way that I still felt comfortable doing, and that wasn't overly stressful for me. And then as I became more well, I incrementally got back into my practice, which is going wonderfully now. So, and in a lot of ways, my experiences has made me a more empathetic listener, and I'm grateful for that experience in terms of helping other parents. So.
Well, ladies, you gave some wonderful answers. So just I'm gonna say that your answers definitely did resonate with me. Setting boundaries with, again, family members, and even friends in some cases, where you just feel their interaction, it is definitely having that detrimental impact on your life, but even your life as a clinician too. Just remembering that you have the right, we all have the right to keep people on the shelf as long as we need to. I think too, even just professionally, those moments where I've had rough days, for lack of better words, when the day is done before I go home and transition into my role in being a dad and a husband, allowing myself to feel my feelings and emotions. Of course, seeking out my therapy when I have to, but not being afraid that, if I need to extend my self-care over the next couple of days, if I need to take You know, maybe an extra 15 minutes, half hour for my long walk. I'll do that. If I want to maybe sleep in on the weekend, or whenever I have a day off, maybe another half hour or hour, then so be it. But even to kind of what I mentioned, the idea of gratitude, even at the end of the day, despite however difficult it was to, you know, work with my clients through these issues, reminding myself that, you know, but there's a gratitude in that clients are coming to us. They trust us. You know, we have that rapport with them, and they're sharing and disclosing these really difficult things with us. But again, we're there for them. We're providing that holding space, even if we're not, you know, giving a ton of feedback or whatnot. That empathy, that listening, that non-judgment, non-bias, all of these things are probably more than they're getting in their everyday lives from their own families, you know, and other quote unquote important people. So being able to find a gratitude in that, and just reminding myself at the end of the day, this is why I chose this profession. And it's that thing that just keeps me going to be as best of a therapist as I can be day by day.
Thank you, Louise. And thank you, Erica and Lori. I think that wrapped up so many of the topics from this last hour together, and really just a message to those that are joining as parents. You know, you are valued, and you matter, and your emotions and your care is important. And so thank you all for sharing your experiences. I know I've seen so many wonderful comments in the chat of people connecting. Thank you everyone for joining us, for your questions, for your comments, for sharing your experiences in the chat as well with all of us. It was a great last hour together. I appreciate each of you so much for being here and for this important discussion. You know, we talked about so many times of just the importance of talking about mental health and talking about that as a parent, and bringing that to the conversation within your homes and with your family. So on that note, thank you again, Erica, Lori, Louise, and thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.